Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for watching. In this video, I kind of wanted to kickstart a series that I had in mind. Today, I kind of came up with the idea, and I figured I would share it with you all. So my idea is this. I have been working with JavaScript for several years, and it's become something, that's just sort of second nature to me. I've worked with a lot of JavaScript libraries, React. Currently, I work as a software engineer, and I use JavaScript every single day for everything that I do, server-side, front-end, all that kind of stuff. So recently, I was feeling like, I really need to branch out and try something else. So I heard from a couple different people that Haskell was an interesting language, so I figured, I've got some a little bit of time. Let me look into it, see what I can learn. So my idea is this: I'm going to be sharing my journey on learning Haskell with you. So I just started learning the language today. Looked into some of the main differences between Haskell and JavaScript, and I would just like to share some of that with you. Obviously, there's a lot involved, and I don't want to make this a tutorial. It's really just some of the insights and some of the things that I found that were particularly challenging or particularly different between Haskell and JavaScript. So I'll be kind of making a little bit of a running commentary over the next couple weeks and putting out just a few videos as I learn more. So I'll be sharing all of that with you. If you have any questions about Haskell and you haven't been able to figure out the answers to it, or perhaps you have something that you think would be useful for me to know because I am brand new to this language. Today is my first day taking a look at it. I would love to hear all about it in the comments below. I will be sharing the resources that I've been using to teach myself Haskell, so I'll have those in the description below this video, and so hopefully those will help you if you feel inclined to also learn the language. It can be a little overwhelming, but I found what's really interesting about it is that the syntax is actually very close to what you would find in mathematics. So creating function, doing all sorts of other operations, it's very similar to what you would do in algebra or any other mathematics or form of mathematics. So one other really interesting point about Haskell is that it's a strongly typed language, so we can break that down a little bit, but I don't want to get kind of stuck in the weeds with that because there are a lot of really great tutorials out there that show the difference between strongly typed and loosely typed languages. But needless to say, JavaScript is a loosely typed language, contrasting that with Haskell, which is a strongly typed language. We can talk about that a little bit today, which is really cool because that comes built in right out of the box with Haskell, where it doesn't with JavaScript. With JavaScript, I use at work all day. We use something called TypeScript. There's also something called Flow. There's a lot of different ways to convert JavaScript to a strongly typed language. Today we're actually going to be using the strongly typed parts of Haskell that come for free right out of the box. I'll be breaking that down a little bit. We'll be talking about some data types in Haskell and how they're different from JavaScript, and I will be using I'll be using Vim to kind of show the difference between the two different languages. So I'll have a window for JavaScript and a window for Haskell, and we can go through a little bit of what the differences are and how things look differently in different languages. All right, let's go ahead and get into it.
All right, so this is inside my text editor. I'm inside an HS file, which I learned is the extension for a Haskell file. So this is helloworld.hs. So yeah, we can get into the syntax in a moment, but I did want to talk a little bit about something called the GHCI, which stands for Glasgow Haskell compiler. And I'm assuming the I stands for interface, but I might be wrong on that. It probably just means, compiler. It's just part of that compiler. Because whenever I've seen that spelled out, it's Glasgow, Haskell, C, and then I is usually lowercase. So, and look at that. There it is, right there. So that's exactly what I have installed. I've also installed some tooling into Vim, my text editor. And so I get some syntax highlighting, which is cool. I get some, I'm using the Haskell language server. So it has its own dedicated language server for all this kind of stuff, which is super cool. So you'll notice there's obviously syntax highlighting for that, so that's pretty neat. What I'm using is I'm actually running this in my Glasgow Haskell Haskell compiler, and so I'm just going to call it the GCI from now on. But you'll notice that I'm actually inside of a folder which has two files, a JS file and a Haskell file. And then we'll just run the GHCI. And what that's going to do is that's going to open this up. And you can run :L to load a file. And so I'm going to load the hello world .hs. And so now I'm inside of the compiler console, I'm assuming, and I'll be able to run certain commands and also run the file from here. So alternatively, you can do this. You can say GHCI hello world .hs, so whatever file you're trying to open. So you can open it directly instead of doing the $L thing and loading it in. So I've found that that's a lot faster. Once you're inside of here, you can actually run the file that you're currently loaded into by doing :R and entering. And so you'll notice it says, okay, one module loaded. So that means that we ran that file and we are currently able to interact with it and interact with the functions that are in that file. This is a little bit like Python. I have a little bit of experience with Python a few years ago, and there was idle where you could do commands like this, and we'll use some of those in a little bit. So like I said before, this is really not meant to be a tutorial. I just kind of want to go through what I know about Haskell so far. So this is what I know about the compiling process. There's a lot that I would love to learn, and I'm constantly doing research. This is, again, the first day that I've learned about this. So, all right, so let's take a look at some of the notes that I've learned. I was going through a video that's like an hour and a half on YouTube, and I'll link that in the description. And it showed me some really awesome stuff. And so that's kind of what this file, what everything in this file is. So there's like 167 lines of code, and it's pretty much verbatim everything that was in that video, but with just a few additions and some notes that I left. So you can make comments. Before I get to that, I do want to mention that these imports, I am getting a, not an error, but a warning from the language server, the Haskell language server in Vim. And it seems to say that this is redundant, me importing this. This was recommended in the video, but the video is 5 years old. It was in 2015, so I'm assuming that this is an old process that we probably don't need to do anymore. But I'm leaving it there. I'll probably delete that eventually, just because Haskell probably is a lot smarter than it was 5 years ago, because languages do that, they change. And so this is probably not important to do anymore. So I'll know more in future videos, I assume. Okay, so this is how we make a comment. You'll do a double dash. You can do multi-line comments with the curly bracket and the single dash, and these are multi-line comments. I talked a little bit about, or I learned a lot about data types. So integers are really just an int is a bound number. Integers are unbound whole numbers. I'm sure I'll get into using those in a future video. Double. I've really only seen him use doubles once in the entire video, so generally speaking, like I said, this is the type used for anything which uses numbers, although really I'm using more of ints than anything, so we'll probably get into more advanced uses of these data types in future episodes. Boolean, bool is obviously a boolean, char is essentially a string, but there's also a string type, so I'll have to look at when the best time is to use the char versus the string. So if you know the answer to that, I would love to have some more information on that. It sounds like a really cool topic to dive into, or maybe just a rabbit hole that doesn't mean anything. So that would be good to know as well. Tuple is a list of many different data types. We don't have this in JavaScript, but this is a Haskell thing. It's usually just for storing two values. If you're familiar with hash tables, this is like the bucket in the hash table. In JavaScript, we'll use an array, and we'll just have it at index 0 and 1. Essentially, tuples are fairly common, and we can, like, replicate that, and we don't have that native to JavaScript, but we can do the same thing with an array. So tuples, so there's that. I'm sure there are more data types, but these are the only ones he covered in the video. So yeah, it'd be cool to know about some other ones. Okay, lists have the kind of the array shape that you'll see in JavaScript. So like if I were to pull this up, in JavaScript we have this. So if I were to say like const r1, worst name for an array ever, but it works. And then in here we have our array items, so 1, 2, 3, and so on, right? So this is how we would create an array in JavaScript. And in TypeScript, or I'm sorry, Haskell rather, this is called a list. So it uses the same, the same hard brackets, but it is a list instead of an array. So there's a lot of things you can do with an array, not an array, with a list, and that was discussed in length in the video. Lots of different things. So concatenating is done with 2 plus, and then whatever you're concatenating. So now this concatenated list is a combination of this and this new array that we've added to the end. So we can actually look at that. So if we want to look at concatenated list, we can move back over to the GHCI, and we can say concatenated. Let's see if it'll help me fill it in. Concated list. Here we go. And there it is, 12, 2, 4, 5, and then 12, 3, 5, 7. So that's actually what we have here. So that's the concatenated list. Combine the items into a list using the colon operator. I'm told this is very important, and I've actually seen this used a lot. So this is super cool. So you can combine items, and we can use the colon operator for a lot of different things. And I've actually seen it used as the rest operator, and in JavaScript I've seen it used to pull off specific indices, or pull off specific items at particular index or indices in a list. So these colons get used for a lot of things. It's pretty cool.
Thank you all very much for watching this video. I know we talked about a whole lot of different stuff. I hope it was slightly beneficial to you, and maybe you'll even consider picking up Haskell yourself. Hopefully you were drawn to this video because you actually were interested in Haskell, but if not, it's a language that I would highly encourage you to look into. I've heard from a lot of different people that it's very beneficial to them as programmers. I definitely would not recommend it as a first language. JavaScript is a little more suited as a first language, so if you've never coded before, look into a JavaScript tutorial. But if you are an experienced programmer and you've already done some coding with Python or perhaps a different language, Haskell is a really cool thing to look into. Thank you again very much for watching. I hope to see you in part 2 of this video. I had to break it up a little bit just because it's so long, but hopefully we'll see you there. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. Thank you all very much for your support. See you in the next video.